Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for being here. I'm delighted to be here this morning with my colleague, Congressman Langevin, our Secretary of State, Nellie Gorbea, and Jane Coster from the League of Women Voters, to announce the introduction of my Automatic Voter Registration Act and to discuss the work that we're doing at the federal, state, and local levels to make it easier for hundreds of thousands of eligible Rhode Islanders to participate in our democracy. Our democracy is founded on the principle that every citizen has the right to participate and make their voices heard on Election Day. The right to vote is an essential part of making government work for the people it is intended to serve. But today, the right to vote is under attack by some who want to throw up new roadblocks to voter participation, and particularly to make it difficult for low-income, urban, and minority voters to participate. Here are just a few examples. Last year, lawmakers in Ohio enacted 3 new laws that make it more difficult to vote early or vote by absentee ballot. 2 options that are especially important for working families who can't afford to take time off from their jobs to go and vote. And the Secretary of State spent taxpayer funds to defend these restrictions in court when they were challenged. In 2013, the United States Supreme Court voted 5-4 to overturn key elements of the Voting Rights Act of 1965 that protected minority voters in 15 states where racial discrimination was common. Congressman John Lewis, who fought with Dr. King for voting rights, said the court's decision gutted the most powerful tool this nation has ever had to stop discriminatory voting practices from becoming law. And in 2011, as governor of Texas, Rick Perry signed a voter ID law that federal judge Nelva Gonzalez-Ramos later ruled was motivated because of its, quote, detrimental effects on the African American and Hispanic electorate, end quote. Under this law, you could actually use a gun license as a valid form of identification, but not a college or university ID. These are just a few of the many examples of the ways that some in this country are trying to gain a political advantage by making it easier for certain people to vote and much more difficult for others. These actions do not reflect our values as Americans. They're contrary to the ideals of our founding fathers. And all of us who hold the responsibility of serving an elective office should be making it as easy as possible for eligible voters to exercise their right to vote. And that's why last week I introduced the Automatic Voter Registration Act of the United States House of Representatives. This bill, H.R. 2694, is co-sponsored by 46 of my colleagues in the House, including Congressman Langevin and Congressman John Lewis. The Automatic Voter Registration Act is modeled after a state law that Oregon Governor Kate Brown signed earlier this year. My bill would require that every state ensures that anyone who's qualified to vote and who has provided information to a motor vehicle registry is automatically registered to vote. It's a significant improvement over the current system, which requires eligible voters to opt in by registering before they're allowed to vote. My bill reverses that presumption and shifts the burden from the individual to the state, meaning that unless someone explicitly opts out of registering, they will have the opportunity to participate on Election Day. The impact would be significant for participation in our democracy. According to the Pew Center on the states, there are at least 51 million eligible men and women in the United States today who are not registered to vote, meaning they cannot cast a ballot on Election Day. Oregon added about 300,000 registered voters after implementing their automatic registration law. And here in Rhode Island, according to the Secretary of State's office, about 249,000 eligible voters are in the DMV system but not registered as voters. Passing the Automatic Voter Registration Act would have a tremendously positive impact on the quality of our democracy by removing barriers to participation for millions of eligible voters. It would finally modernize an outdated system and ensure that the voices of millions more Americans will be heard in our elections. It should be as easy as possible for eligible voters to participate in our democracy. The United States is the most successful democracy in the history of the world, and it's time that we put an end to the shameful attempts to limit voter participation that we've seen in recent years and make sure that more Americans are able to participate than ever before. I'm grateful to have Congressman Langevin supporting this fight. I'm grateful that we have a strong advocate for voters in Secretary of State Nellie Gorbea, because it's critical at every level of government, federal, state, and local, that we work together to protect voting rights in the United States and here in Rhode Island. This is a fight worth having because it reflects our values as Americans. And I now am pleased to turn to my colleague in the House, Congressman Jim Langevin.
David, thank you very much, and good morning, everyone. I am very pleased to be here today with my colleague, Congressman Cicilline, and applaud him for his work on this important legislation. Pleased to be here with Secretary of State Nellie Gorbea, as well as the President of the League of Women Voters, who's joined us as well, in our collective efforts to protect the voting voting rights of Rhode Islanders and expand opportunities for people to get registered to vote, to be able to participate in our democracy to the greatest extent possible. This is something that I think all elected officials strive to achieve. How do we get more people engaged in the democratic process, especially our young people, which we know we're challenged in that area of really motivating, encouraging, inspiring young people to get registered, go to the polls, and the more we can do to make it as easy as possible, bring down barriers, opening up opportunities for people to participate, the better. I certainly made that a priority when I was Secretary of State, and actually changed the law to allow people to do same-day registration and voting for president and vice president. I'd like to see more. I tried to do it then. I know Secretary Gorbea is taking up that charge, which I'm excited about. She'll speak more to that in a minute. But I first, most importantly today, I want to commend Congressman Cicilline for his work on this automatic voter registration act, and I'm very proud to be an original co-sponsor of the bill. I think it really reaffirms just the presumption right away that all people are eligible to participate in our democratic process, who fit the criteria of being properly here and registered, and we shouldn't put up barriers. We should just have that presumption that people can participate in the democratic process, and this is what he's working to ensure. I'd like to thank Secretary Gorbea for hosting us here today. She's a true champion of voting rights, and I'm so proud of her work on behalf of all Rhode Islanders. She has definitely carried on the great tradition of making the Secretary of State's office the people's partner in government, and I applaud her for her work. Now, in other states, lawmakers are taking steps, as Congressman Cicilline mentioned, that fundamentally make it harder for people to vote and participate in the electoral process, limiting early voting, adding onerous identification restrictions, and making it harder for citizens to cast an absentee ballot. Unfortunately, Rhode Island is bucking that trend. Secretary of State Gorbea has been pushing for online registration, expanding early voting, and an easier absentee ballot process. Now, while Rhode Island is a leader amongst the states, I believe also Congress, though, has to do its part to ensure that every citizen in every state can exercise his or her right to vote. So Congressman Cicilline's bill will ensure that every citizen who goes and gets services from the Department of Motor Vehicles is automatically registered to vote, simplifying the registration process and helping more people to make their voice heard in the ballot box. And I like the way the bill is crafted, because it's not just, as I understand it, just about someone who's getting a driver's license, but who's ever getting services at the Department of Motor Vehicles. Now, for example, in my case, I don't have a driver's license, but I do have a state ID, and I do have a vehicle registered in my name. So in a case where someone with a disability, or someone, a senior citizen, someone who just doesn't have a license, it would go beyond just registering. It's just applying for a driver's license. So the ability of our citizenry to participate in the political process, the right to vote, is one of the fundamental building blocks of the United States. Any restriction on that right, anything that makes it harder for a citizen to become involved in our democracy, is anathema to our bedrock principles as a nation. Since our founding, this nation expanded the franchise many times, each time making this country a better place. Weaving more voices into our electoral tapestry, I believe, is a moral imperative, a moral obligation. No truly plural society can exist on merely the voices of the few. So with that, again, I want to thank Congressman Cicilline for his leadership on this issue, and of course I want to thank Secretary Gorbea for the work done here in Rhode Island. Again, pleased to be the president of the League of Women Voters, and the work that they do to promote inclusion in the democratic process and active electorate. So with that, David, congratulations and proud to support.
Thank you so much, Jim. And I'll turn it over to our Secretary of State, our host, and again, thank her for hosting us, but for her extraordinary leadership on many issues that we didn't have access to without.
Well, thank you so much, Congressman. It's a pleasure to be here with two absolutely stalwart leaders at the federal level that happen to also be leaders in our community, Congressman Cicilline and Congressman Langevin. And of course, it's wonderful to be here too with Jane Coster, our president of the League of Women Voters. As Secretary of State, I'm working hard to make sure that all Rhode Islanders are engaged and empowered. And the way we do that is by making sure that we make it easier for people to participate. That's why I'm excited to join Congressman Cicilline and Congressman Langevin this morning with this Automatic Voter Registration Act that's been introduced by Congressman Cicilline. It helps accomplish this by using existing systems and technology to expand the universe of voters that is here in Rhode Island. It's clear that our election systems are outdated, given how advanced our technology has become. And so what we need to do on a continual basis is to make sure that the processes that we have from a bygone era are not holding up people being able to participate. I welcome any opportunity to engage and empower more Rhode Islanders in the process and wholeheartedly support this legislation. That's why I'm also working closely with the General Assembly to pass legislation entitled the Voting and Elections Modernization Act of 2015. And I think the work that we're doing here at the local level dovetails nicely into the work that's being done at the federal level. House Bill 6051 and Senate Bill 821 are going to allow for quick and secure online voter registration, provide the tools to clean up our voter rolls, and expand existing in-person early voting opportunities. Now, again, this is about making sure that the technology that we have at our disposal makes it easier for people. If we already know, and when people are going to a state office, they're already telling us, that they're a citizen and that they're, here to do legal business, why wouldn't we offer them the opportunity to also register to vote, as opposed to, just having them do an extra step of opting in, let's just make sure that if they have a problem, then they can opt out. I think that this is exciting. It's exciting that Rhode Island is taking this step forward and this leadership at a national level. If we're serious about turning our state around and creating opportunities for all Rhode Islanders, we have to start ensuring that more Rhode Islanders are engaged and empowered. And so I'm working hard at the state level. I'm proud to join my federal delegation, and thank you very much, Congressman Cicilline and Congressman Langevin. It's wonderful to be here this morning, starting this way. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Madam Secretary. And now we'll hear from Jane Coster from the League of Women Voters, who, as an organization, has been so involved in this issue and a great advocate for so many years, and we're so that you're here today.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the opportunity.
Would you say and spell your name, please?
Jane Coster, K-O-S-T-E-R,
Thank you.
President of the League of Women Voters. So I'm here today to represent the League of Women Voters of Rhode Island and our national league as well, and all of our local leagues here in the state of Rhode Island. It's a pleasure and an honor to have been invited to this press conference. I could go back 95 years, if I had the time, to talk about the history of the League of Women Voters. We all know that the suffrage movement, previous to the passage of the 19th Amendment, gave women the right to vote. And of course, then that is our prioritized issue and has been for 95 years. We'll be celebrating that 95th anniversary, by the way, at the Marble House, Alva Vanderbilt's home in Newport, Rhode Island, where she was a very active suffragist and was very interested in all having the voting rights. And I'm honored also to be here with Secretary of State Gorbea and with our two representatives to Congress. Secretary of State Gorbea joined the League of Women Voters New England for our conference in late May, where we prioritized voting rights and elections law. So we talked a great deal about that, and she was the star of the two-day conference for sure. The League also prioritizes other issues, obviously, and we have about 5 that we're prioritizing this year, and we're very well known in the State House and have been up there testifying in several committees, and especially now, we are supporting the 2 bills that the Secretary of State has just mentioned. We're supporting them strongly with our other good government organizations. We're a total partner with the Common Cause Rhode Island and with the ACLU Rhode Island, and nationally, as we support these bills, and we applaud you, Representative Cicilline, and you also, Representative Langevin, for supporting voting rights and extending voting rights. We lobbied at the State House, and we do support these bills. Just very briefly, I should mention that on a national level, the League of Women Voters has what we call an e-vote now. So we are really we're targeting everyone, those who have moved, those who are becoming new citizens of our country, and we're also targeting those who have had a really important part of their lives this summer and graduating from college. So these are 18 to 24-year-olds, the millennials, and they are our target. So they can go, and we're talking nationally about going to our website to e-vote, which will bring them to Vote 411, which is our national electronic online voting and voter guide. So we're hopeful that we can extend, as all of us have said here this morning, extend to all citizens who are eligible to vote, the right to vote, and all that is in the bills that we have talked about today. Again, I am very honored to be here. I hope you go to our website, especially the League of Women Voters, RhodeIsland.org, where all of our issues, all of our positions on issues that we support and that we advocate for, going to our different representatives in the local communities and municipalities here in Rhode Island, and also to advocate because we are a grassroots, nonpartisan organization. That's who we are. And we are, again, at the State House lobbying. We're really excited to have been with you, and we thank all of you for having the same priorities as the League of Women Voters does. Thank you.
Thank you.
If I may, Ms. Coster, while the microphones are in front of you, did you say that the National League of Women Voters is supportive of Congressman Cicilline's bill?
The League of Women Voters Rhode Island, that's an excellent question.
I'm talking nationally.
Yes, nationally. We're talking nationally, and the National League applauds all and follows all bills in Congress. We have a lobbyist in Congress. Our president of the National League is a lawyer and does lobby for us. We have other lobbyists. We do applaud Representative Cicilline. We were invited to the press conference, and I would love to say that I have talked to someone at National, but it's only been a few days. And
The bill was just introduced.
It was just introduced, thank you.
You don't know that the National League of Women Voters is supportive of this?
I would say that the National League of Women Voters will strongly support the belief that Representative Cicilline has and what he has placed in this bill. I cannot speak for the National League today.
They've not taken a position yet.
I do.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. The bills are just asking. We are happy to get you in contact with the national folks.
Fine.
I just want to, before we start with the questions, I just want to make one final point, and that is that, as the Secretary mentioned, there are a number of initiatives that are designed to make it easier for people to vote. Early voting, absentee voting, a whole series of things. And some people have asked, well, why the Automatic Voter Registration Act? Why did you start with that? And the reason is really because that's the entry point. And that before all those other opportunities are available, someone has to be eligible and actually be permitted legally to participate. And so what the bill does is it reverses the presumption so that if you are a qualified elector, you turn 18, you are registered. And then you have 21 days to opt out. So rather than the presumption being reversed that you are presumed not to want to vote and have to opt in, we say, no, actually, we'll make you a voter, and then if you decide you don't want to participate, you can opt out. So that's that.
Are you doing this as a counter to those that are trying to disenfranchise people?
Well, I'm not doing it as a counter. I'm doing it because I think we have a responsibility to respond to very serious deficiencies in terms of the number of people who are participating in our elections. The way that we empower people in this democracy is to make sure more voices are heard. I think Congressman Langevin and I see too many examples where the voices of the very powerful and the well-connected and the heavily financed are heard in Washington. And the way we can counter that is to be sure that everyone has an opportunity to participate in elections, to make it as easy as possible to engage more people in the voting process.
What deficiencies are we talking about here?
No, I'm talking about in terms of the number of people participating. That, there are a number of millions of eligible voters who don't participate in our elections. This will remove one of the obstacles, the registration requirement.
Since this automatic voter registration is not here in Rhode Island yet, why not start at the state level or do the state level in addition to national level? What's about a state push?
Well, again, I think, I'll let the Secretary speak. I mean, I think the fact of the matter is if we pass this bill, the Automatic Voter Registration Act, at the national level, it will require states to adopt this
But it's Congress,
process.
that's not going to happen.
Well, Congress passes stuff, but the point is we have to work on this. And I think the way that, we want to make sure that we do this as a country. I don't have the ability to introduce legislation at the state level. So I think it's a very important responsibility at the national level for us to pass automatic voter registration when you look at what's happening around the country and efforts to make it more difficult for folks to vote. And I think at the same time, I expect that we'll see efforts at state levels all around the country, and let the Secretary speak about whether it makes sense here or not.
Yeah, absolutely. No, we, so I applaud the leadership at the national level. I mean, you look at one of our most effective recent experiences with broader participation or broader registration purposes. It was the national voter registration, the DMV, motor voter law. And I was lucky enough that was one of my first activities as a Rhode Islander, was to participate in the task force that implemented that here in Rhode Island. There's something that when it happens at the national level and you're able to then implement it, it just quells a lot of the concerns that people have. Well, why are we going to do it differently than somewhere else? So I applaud the leadership at the national level. We have to do this both at the national level and at the local level, absolutely.
Are people asking for this here on the local level?
I think that people are, as I talk to Rhode Islanders, making it easier for people to participate in our elections is absolutely something that they're excited about.
Have you talked to any General Assembly leadership?
Not specifically on this particular bill. I have been speaking with them, of course, about greater voter registration access and greater voter participation, modernizing our election systems, and have been positively encouraged. Just tomorrow we'll have actually our first vote on the floor on our Voting and Elections Modernization Act, and I'm quite excited about moving this bill forward because it's going to dovetail nicely with the work that Congressman Cicilline and Langevin are doing at the federal level by making it easier for people to register to vote online and and make sure that we can track their moves so that you can update your voter address online as well.
Do you have the demographics on those over 200,000 people in Rhode Island who aren't registered to vote?
We don't have that right as of yet, but we should be able to calculate that over the next few months. As hopefully, if online voter registration passes, we'll be doing a lot more work on precisely that group of voters that's not yet registered to vote.
Yeah, let me speak to that for a minute if I could. What I found in my experience over the years about why people aren't registered to vote, they can fall into one of several categories, but two of the probably the most pervasive is that one, especially for a young person, they may not know how to get registered to vote, and it's not, they may not see it as a priority just yet, or again, that not knowing is one barrier that we found. The other is that a family or an individual experience some major life change, change your job, changing neighborhood, moving into a new area, moving out of state, and they come in and they're taking care of all of the other things, and it may fall through the cracks that they didn't change their voter registration, didn't get registered. And so what happens is, election day comes, oh, you know what, I gotta get registered, I forgot to do it. By then, it's too late if you can't participate in local elections if you haven't already registered 30 days before. That's one of the things I was pleased when we changed the law to allow for same-day registration and voting for president and vice president. But if people say, oh, it's too late, I haven't done it, it's too, I'm not eligible to vote in this election, we'll do it at a later time. So again, people just don't get to it because it's some, again, life change that happened, and it just wasn't one of the things that they were able to get to before the election actually happened. So this would, certainly, you have to get a new driver's license or change your registration if you've moved into, say, a new state. That's just it's a life necessity at that time. So this is, you're kind of killing two birds with one stone at that point. They deal with the registry of motor vehicles, they will automatically become registered. So
I think one piece of data that would complement what the representative has just said is that on average, the United States citizen moves about 12 times during his lifetime. And with my mentioning the idea of the new graduates and they're moving out of state, as in Rhode Island, or someplace else, it's very important that we are able to connect with these people that are moving regularly in our country.
And one thing I would just add to that is, remember, if you look at the history of voting in this country, there was a time, of course, everyone wasn't allowed to vote. Certain people, if you didn't own property, if you weren't of a certain race, if you were a woman. So, we are at a different place in the history of our country where we want everyone who is 18 years old, who's qualified to vote, to participate. And so we no longer need, I think, this process that puts a burden on the voter to go and register. We ought to shift, again, flip the presumption on its head and say, if you're an eligible elector, when you turn 18, you are allowed to vote. And again, given an opportunity to opt out, which the bill does. But, we should be, I think, celebrating our democracy by ensuring everyone can participate easily, and we no longer should have barriers that currently exist. I know this.
And we have the technology. It's not, this is not based on, if we have the information, or we're collecting the information on somebody who's already a citizen that's turning 18, then why not just assume that that person is eligible to vote? Why put them through that extra hurdle? It goes to government processes that just haven't kept up with what's available with the technology that we have available to us today. And we as public leaders, as public servants, need to make sure that our governmental systems aren't putting undue burdens on the electorate. That's what we're here to do.
The 200,000 number, that is over the whole population in Rhode Island. That's not just folks who we know have interaction with the DMV and are also eligible. That's everybody?
No, that's 249 eligible voters who are in the DMV system,
Okay,
but are not registered as voters.
Yeah, and that's an estimate.
Yeah.
We're in the process, because of the online voter registration system, of looking at those numbers of who's registered and who's moved out of state and who hasn't, and how we're going to be able to clean up the voter rolls. And so that's right now an estimate that we have gotten to through the Electronic Registration Information Center. Eric.
There's 249,000 Rhode Islanders who are eligible to vote, are in the DMV system, but are not registered to vote.
That is correct.
Thank you. Okay.
Any other questions?
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job, David.
Thanks, James. Thank you, James.
I'm going to double check on that. I don't know that it's in the DMV.